wasn't until I read some of these particular books, when I was probably about 10, that I sat down and said, I want to write something like that. So that is what I set off to try to do. I sat down on a normal afternoon with a blue notebook, this one, and began the first draft of Stolen. I didn't know what it was going to be about on that normal afternoon. I knew I just wanted to write about a wolf pup, so I did. And it began a crazy adventure of wolf packs and prophecies and betrayals and battles, all of which is still here as the first version. And because writing is something you have to be consistent at, and I wasn't working at a consistent pace yet, still, working on it. I didn't finish this first draft until several years later. So I look back at what's in here now, and I think it was pretty poor writing, but it was what helped turn my little flame of excitement for storytelling into a fire. So after finishing this first draft, I was so excited that I plowed forward and wrote another first draft of what I decided was book 2, and even began the first draft of book 3. And of course I did this over the course of a year or two because I was still inconsistent. But I was growing older and more mature in my skills. So it was then that I looked back at book 1 and realized it needed revision before I could ever hope to do something with it. So I put the rest of the series on the back burner and focused on making book 1 into something more presentable first. So I began typing it on the computer from that first notebook and revising as I went. But then I guess I hit what I would call an editor's block, and I completely lost motivation to keep going. And my writing then decided it was going to go on vacation until about the end of middle school. And then enter the start of my high school years. This is when I joined a new homeschool co-op in Umatilla, and that was when things really took a big turn. Because at this co-op, I met a friend who I learned was also, like me, an aspiring writer. I think it's interesting how God puts people in your life at just the right times, because this friend was certainly one of them. We started to talk to each other about our projects, and together bemoaned the difficulties we faced with them. Hearing him talk about his own writing was inspiring, and it rekindled that little fire in me that had since grown dull. So then I started to wonder, what would it be like if I returned to Elephant Wolf again, not on my own, but with my friend this time? And if I asked him to read it, would he? I knew he was good, and it would certainly help to have an opinion coming from someone else who understood the struggles that writing often brought with it. I was terrified that if I shared it, he might not like it, but I knew that if I wanted to grow and get better, I needed to take the step. So after a week or two of trying to ask him and chickening out, I finally mustered up the courage. I just said yes. And then I panicked. I was literally sweating and trembling as I typed up the email that contained the first few pages of Stolen. But I hit send, and it was probably one of the best things I did for my book. My friend did not dislike it, as I'd feared, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows like I'd hoped either. He pointed out things I could do to make it better, and though at the time this discouraged me, it helped me on the path to becoming a better and more mature writer. Without my friend, I doubt I ever would have finished a presentable draft of Stolen. He read it piece by piece as I wrote, and knowing he was always there waiting for the next part motivated me to keep going. So I pretty much rewrote the entire book, keeping the same basic plot but changing almost everything else in order to make it stronger. And about a year later, I had what was kind of the first draft of the final draft of Stolen. And then things got really exciting from there. Only about a month after I finished this revised draft, my mom surprised me by telling me she had contacted a professional author who was going to meet with me via Zoom and give me feedback on my book. I was both thrilled and terrified. I knew this author, Jenny L. Cody, from hearing her speak one year at the FPA Homeschool Convention in Orlando. She is the award-winning author of the Epic Order of the Seven series, and her work has been likened to that of C.S. Lewis. So that call was a huge turning point in my writing journey. Because leading up to this, I was struggling with the question of, this book is really close to being done, so do I publish it now, or do I wait till I'm older? I was thinking and praying a lot about it, but I didn't know exactly what to do. So I asked God to tell me what He wanted me to do through Miss Cody's feedback that day, and she said go for it. So my time spent with her that day was was amazing. She helped me refine my work, taught me the basics of the publishing world, and encouraged me on my journey, all in that, one call.
All for free.
All for free.
Wow.
She also she hooked me up with her own professional editor and encouraged me to join a program called the Young Writers Workshop, which is an online program where I received more guidance as I pursued publication. So now my question of do I publish now was pretty much answered. Miss Cody, who is a professional award-winning author, was telling me to go for it, and I had a professional editor waiting to work on the book with me. But that still didn't stop doubt from creeping in. Sure, my question had been answered, kind of, but was it really what I should do? And was it really, truly God's will? So it was in one of those moments when I was really struggling with this doubt and uncertainty that I turned to God again and asked him that if this was truly his will, he would send me a cardinal. A cardinal because they have a lot of personal significance for me. For as long as I remember, whenever I would see one, it would be kind of like a God wink reminder that he sees me always and is there. So at that time, it had been a while since I'd seen one too. It wasn't like they were all over our yard, could randomly land in front of me at any instant. So I asked God that if publishing this was really what he wanted me to do, and moreover, in a wider sense, if he really wanted me to be a writer, he would send me a cardinal. So admittedly, I wanted it so badly, and I was so desperate that I literally went outside and looked for cardinals in the trees. Needless to say, that didn't work. I think it was the next day that, after giving up on the thought that I would see it if I looked for it, I spent some time in prayer again and resolved to be patient. So I stopped deliberately keeping my eyes open in the hopes that I'd see what I wanted if I did, and then went about my day as usual. And later, when this wasn't even on my mind really, I was sitting at my desk doing something, and there's a big window in front of my desk, which I often stare out of absentmindedly when I'm thinking. So it was one of those moments I just looked out of my window randomly, and it wasn't even like I deliberately decided to. It was almost like I'm just doing it absentmindedly, or like my eyes were just guided up to look there. And there was a cardinal sitting on the fence right outside my window, so close I could make out all the details. I was pretty shocked and was looking to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. But it wasn't, and it stayed there for several minutes as I took it in and then flew away. And as if to drive the point home, for the next week or two I saw cardinals everywhere I went. And ever since then, I can't tell you how many times a cardinal has flown by me when I was discouraged or uncertain about something, as if to remind me of this, that God still sees. So, needless to say, I went forward and began to pursue publication for Stolen. The Young Writers Workshop program helped significantly with that. I learned from some amazing instructors and peers, all of whom helped guide me forward. I found test readers there and a group that helped me build a launch team when the time came to publish. And God really parted the waters and provided the way for me in every way needed. I found a typesetter at the Young Writers Workshop who offered to do it for me for free, which was amazing because that usually costs in the thousands. My best friend made the cover art, and my graphic designer uncle was able to fix an emergency with the formatting only a few days before my deadline. And I released Stolen on May 23rd of last year, so its 1 year publication anniversary is actually coming up pretty soon. And lots of amazing opportunities came afterward. Miss Cody interviewed and promoted me a couple times. I did 3 different book signings, and it's now available on Amazon, and it's in a couple libraries and for sale at Sensational Farms in Umatilla. So that's kind of Stolen's journey. I'm still really amazed by how everything fell into place for that. But my writing journey hasn't ended with its publication, because in fact I feel like it's just now starting to begin. Because at the start of this year, a door opened and I decided to take a really big leap and do something that I've wanted to do for several years now. Come July, I will be joining a program called the Author Conservatory. This is associated with the Young Writers Workshop, but it's a much higher and more serious program. It's basically college for writers who want to have the skills to become full-time authors as a career. The instructors are best-selling authors, agents, and mentors to some of the world's top young writers. And the students inside are actually graduating with not only the writing skills they need to succeed, but the business, marketing, and all the other skills needed to actually do well and make a living as a writer possible. So I'm very excited about that. I don't know what all it will lead to or what God will do with it yet, but I can't wait to find out because I know this will equip me with all I need to make this a lifelong thing if that's what God wants. There was a bit of a struggle that came with making the decision to join the conservatory now, and that is that I won't be able to work on continuation of element work for a little while because I'll be working on new projects for the program. But I do know that when I'm able to return to it, I'll have the skills to make it much better than I could right now. Plus, I'm also really excited to work on some new projects and explore and try new genres and characters and grow my skills through that. So, yeah, I don't know where God's going to take me with this in the future, but I do know that however He does use my writing, it will be to shine light into this broken world and to further His kingdom and to spread the truth. One of my favorite genres is actually allegorical fiction, to make a point or to expose something through story. So I'm hoping in the future I will obtain the skills to write things in order to expose what's happening in the world that needs to be changed. Kind of like Animal Farm by George Orwell. I write for truth because that's what people need to hear now more than ever, and I write for freedom and for light. I write for His glory and His purposes, whatever that may encompass in the future. I hope that it will be able to make a difference in some way someday soon. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you again for having me. I'm very honored and I really appreciated this opportunity.